Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in about a minute. We're just going to wait for a few people to join us, and then we will jump right in. Happy Tuesday. Happy International Women's Day. Happy almost spring. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Just jump right in, not linger for too long. So welcome, everybody. We are here to talk about planning with purpose and making the most of your Safe Routes to School events. I'm Corey Johnson with the Safe Routes Partnership. Those of you who've been on these webinars before have seen me a lot, I'm sure. And those of you who are new, it's nice to meet you. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So a few housekeeping slides to kick us off today. For those of you who are new to Safe Routes Partnership, we're a national organization. Our mission is to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and in everyday places, improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, abilities, and building healthy, thriving communities for everyone. And just so you all know, today's session is being recorded. We'll send out a link to the recording along with the presentation slides after the webinar. We also have the chat box open, so please feel free to participate. There are a few participation moments in the presentation, so we'd love to hear your ideas, your stories, your questions. We like the chat to be nice and lively, so please go ahead and participate. We'd love to see what you all are up to. So as I mentioned, I'm Corey. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I'll be today's main presenter. My colleague, Michelle Lieberman, is also on the line. She will be doing some tech support, so she's kind of behind the scenes, but is with us as well. And we'd love to also hear from you all, hear who you are. So if you could please take a moment in the chat to just introduce yourself, your name, where you're zooming in from, your connection to Safe Routes to School or to this work in general. And if you could also respond in the chat to this question: what do you think makes a great Safe Routes to School event? Or if you don't work with Safe Routes to School directly, what do you think makes a great community event? Since we're talking a lot today about event planning and planning with purpose, I'd love to hear from you all about what you think makes a great and successful event. So I'll give you all a moment to put your ideas in the chat, put your intros in the chat, and then we'll get us moving. Thanks, Ava, for kicking us off. Nice to meet you. Hello, Jacob from Denver. A great community event starts with youth leadership. Yes, I love working with young people. And I love when our youth leaders get involved in events from like their inception. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, we're getting a few more people. Hi, Tim, Braden. Great. So please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat box, share some ideas about what you think makes a great event. We'll be having a lot of opportunities to share throughout the webinar. So if you don't want to share now, feel free to jump in a bit later. Tom, I see you're shouting out your parent champions and school-based champions. Yes, absolutely. Where would we be without our champions? So thanks so much for participating. Again, feel free to keep the chat going and we will keep it moving on our end. So a quick rundown of the agenda today. I'm going to do a quick recap of the Colorado Community Engagement Guide, just for those of you who might not be familiar with this resource. It's a newer resource that we put together and launched back in January. And this webinar really builds off of some of the ideas that are located in that guide. So it kind of gives us that nice foundation for the work that we're going to be talking about today. Then we're going to start talking about defining your purpose for your Safe Routes to School event. And we're going to talk a bit about planning and partnerships, and then round out by talking about planning for Bike to School Day, which is now Bike Enroll to School Day, and National Bike Month coming up in May. Some of you might already be in that planning phase, so you want to get some of those gears going as you plan out what those events will look like. And of course, you're always welcome to ask questions or share comments or ideas in the chat box as well. And we have some reminders and next steps for the end of our session. All right, so a quick, just to frame the conversation today, like I mentioned, we worked with Colorado Safe Routes to School and Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to put together a community engagement toolkit, which is all about working together to make meaningful change. And it outlines a community engagement framework, including some best practices, guiding questions. It features some great Colorado programs that are doing wonderful community engagement, and also includes links to tools, worksheets, and additional resources. And this resource also builds off of a lot of Colorado's equity goals and equity initiatives. And the community engagement framework is kind of a six-parter, and we're really going to focus on two of these parts today. The first part is reflecting on our role as community partners and then doing community research. And our first two webinars kind of focused on these different areas. Today, we'll be talking a lot about partnering and planning. So partnering with organizations to build community relationships, and then planning thoughtful, culturally responsive community engagement experiences. So that'll be the bulk of the topics we'll be covering today. And then lastly, there's implementation and sustaining your program. So that's our framework that we're gonna be, that'll be the base for our conversation today. And I'll go more into depth and that in a few minutes. So I wanted to do a quick just overview of Safe Routes to School events 101. We're talking about event planning. It's spring, almost spring. Hopefully the weather's getting a little warmer. We're starting to think about what some of those warm weather activities can be. And so we kind of designed this webinar thinking about some of the events you might be planning for Safe Routes to School going into the spring, including Bike Enroll to School Day. So I wanted to start off by mentioning, when thinking about any sort of, event planning or implementation, your community research is really going to guide your planning process. So when you're putting together your Walk to School Day event, Bike to School Day, Bike Month activities, bike rodeos, a way to make your program or your event really both community responsive and culturally responsive is to make it something that that reflects what the community actually wants and needs. And you'll get that information by doing your community research. So those of you who were on our webinar last month, we talked a lot about community research and what that looks like. So, it's basically just getting to know where you're working and who you're working with. And so, things like walking around your neighborhood, the neighborhood where you work, taking a bike ride, getting on transit, going to different community events, having casual conversations with people. All of those things are part of your community research and will give you more information that you can then use to plan your event. And so when we think about Safe Routes to School events, and a lot of you are very familiar with what these events look like, we're talking about things like Walk Enroll to School Day, Bike Enroll to School Day, your bike rodeos, community walks and rides, even community meetings, whether it's a PTA meeting, task force meeting, school staff meeting, even appreciation days, volunteer appreciation, crossing guard appreciation days, teacher and school staff appreciation. All of those could also be wrapped up in Safe Routes to School. And then things like safety demonstrations, walk audits, campaigns, challenges. If you all have other Safe Routes to School events that you implement, please feel free to add them to the chat box. I know these are kind of like the standard list, but people are doing some pretty creative things these days. So if you have other things that are going on in your Safe Routes to School events world, please do share in the chat. So we know that the purpose of Safe Routes to School events, there can actually be lots of purposes, which we'll talk about a bit today. So you can have a Safe Routes to School event and have multiple purposes for doing a bike to school day event or a bike rodeo. So one purpose could be just to like connect with community members. I think especially now people are looking to, just re-engage a bit more, being, separated from each other during the pandemic and kind of trying to come back together as a community. A Safe Routes to School event could be a great way to reconnect and re-engage with people you might not have connected with recently. Another purpose could be to encourage walking, rolling, and active travel, educating an audience on a skill or a topic, even learning about your audience. So I just mentioned community research, and you can actually incorporate some community research into your events, which I'll talk about a bit later on. Addressing a community need. We've talked about this a lot before, that people are going through a lot, community members are going through a lot, and Safe Routes to School might not be top of mind for everybody. So how can you use your event to address another need in the community that might need to be met, and your event or your venue could be a place to do that. You can also have Safe Routes to School events just to build and sustain momentum. A lot of these events are really fun. People look forward to bike to school day, walk to school day, bike rodeo day, bike challenges, walking challenges. So this could also just be a way to just like have some fun and celebrate, and also kind of keep that energy and enthusiasm going. And again, if you have any other purposes for Safe Routes to School events, somebody in the chat mentioned a purpose could be to raise awareness of a new upcoming trail or other improvement. Yes, so if there are infrastructure changes, if there are new amenities coming to your neighborhood, a new trail, a new bike lane, a Safe Routes to School event could be a great way to let people know what's going on and invite them to be a part of that process and that journey. So I wanted to go through some of these different purposes just to show you a bit about what these mean and what they can look like. So if you have an event and one of your purposes is to connect with your community members, some ideas for things you could do, just go to where people are. I know that a lot of you are probably working on school campuses, although I think that with the pandemic, we've learned that, sometimes off-site events can be a compelling option as well. So going to where people are is a great way to start building those connections. Also, just keeping things kind of casual and informal. I think that we've kind of all gotten used to being a little bit more casual and informal these days. So you incorporate that into your event. Even having spaces to just, creating spaces to have conversations. If there are kids who are off doing a bike rodeo, can you make a little gathering space where parents and caregivers can just sit and chat? And you can chat with them. Again, thinking about creating opportunities to connect with one another. You can also host your activity as a part of a larger community event. So, maybe there's a community fair or festival, so you're not necessarily planning something on your own, but you're, integrating into something that's already happening. That can also take some of the planning pressure off of you. You get to collaborate with your partners and team members. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but that can be another way to connect with community members. And then lastly, focusing on quality over quantity. I know that we like to, sometimes people like to see events with these, huge numbers and it was great. That's one way to measure success, but also thinking about like the quality of the experience is equally important. Next, encouraging walking and rolling. A lot of you are already familiar with this, I'm sure. Things like transforming your space, having decorations or a school mascot come out, having giveaways, music, all of those things help kind of make that fun and encouraging atmosphere. Obviously partnering with your volunteers and instructors, people who can, really both educate and encourage participants, inviting people to try something new. So even just like the way that you're framing your event, framing it as just trying to, coming to try something out and creating that safe space can be really helpful. And then also emphasizing that, a lot of these events are things that can be done as a community or a family, and emphasizing that we're all in this together. So while physical health and physical activity might be one benefit, framing the conversation around, something you can do together with your community or with your friends, with your family can be another way to kind of, bring people in who might be a bit intimidated by the physical activity or getting in shape. framework. Next is educating your audience on a skill or a topic. So again, a lot of you all do these things already, having your worksheets, your activity books, different skills courses. An information booth could be a great idea, just for people to get information about safe routes to school or a new trail, like somebody mentioned. Things like bike repair stations, your videos and songs that talk about, riding a bike safely or crossing a street. All of those things can be incorporated into your event. PSAs and, campaigns, they might not be events, they might be, videos or posters, but those can still be incorporated into what you're planning. And also if you have any like special guests, and a special guest could be anything from, a trail ranger, it could be somebody from the local DOT, it could be, again, the school mascot or safe routes to school mascot, but somebody who can kind of, who the community, trust and would like to hear information from. Next is using an event to learn about your audience, to do some community research at your actual event. So this is something that I do a lot in my work. I do a lot of arts-based community research. So whenever I'm doing an event, I always have some sort of comment board or graffiti wall where people can, write comments or share ideas. Dot surveys can be a great thing to add to your event. I know that some people have done that during walk to school day and bike to school day, just asking, students, how do you normally get to school? You just add a little dot on your survey, and that gives you some great information about how people are traveling. Having a contact information sheet if you're meeting people who might want to learn more about your program, just get their information. Even just having an art or a coloring table where people can, again, sit, chat, talk about different things that are going on in their community. Icebreaker activities, photo booths, model building activities, all of these things you can use and incorporate into your events to learn more about the community that you're working with. And these same activities can also be used for evaluation as well. So there's a nice double purpose going on. Just to give you a sense of what some of these things look like. I know those of you who've been on webinars with me before have seen some of these. This is like, piece of butcher paper. I just wrote a question, tell me what you love about your community and what would you change? And people can come up and write their different ideas. And, from that activity, I learn a lot about the people who I'm working with. Same thing with this little pennant activity that I made for a bike repair clinic. I asked people to share to define their community. So I was working in a neighborhood called East of the River here in DC, and I had people just say East of the River is, and they would write down however they wanted to define their community. And a lot of these are like self-guided too, so I didn't need to be there. I just set it up. I could go and do other things and people did their thing. Here's a picture of a dot survey. It was for a Safe Routes to Healthy Foods event. So we were talking about trying to improve a route to a grocery store. So I had people, respond to what would make them feel safer and comfortable traveling to the grocery store. So everybody got their dot and put their dot in their different, area. Again, this was something that was self-guided. I just, set it out and went into other things. Here's a photo booth that I think Michelle did this one. Photo booths are a great way to get some community feedback. This one asks, a child what she wants to see in her neighborhood. She wants a community garden. So again, it's something that's like fun and also gives you information about the community that you're working with. And then this was a bike to school day banner that we put together at a local elementary school a few years ago. And again, we worked with a local arts organization to put this together. And as the kids were creating, we just asked them about, biking in their community, what made them feel safe, what made them feel unsafe. So while it was like something fun to do, we were also getting that information from the community members. There's a few more photos of what this looks like just on a larger scale. So there's the little butcher paper comment board, super easy, super low tech, and again, pretty self-guided. They're the pennants that we made. So you can also use some of these activities to decorate your space, your event space as well. There's the dot survey, and there's students who are making their banners for Bike to School Day, and we display those banners during the event. So those are a few ideas of ways to incorporate community research into your events. You can also just, talk to people. A lot of the community research that I do is really just having casual conversations with people. So, you can also just chat with different people who are attending. Another purpose that I talked about earlier is addressing a community need. So, in this case, this is when you can invite your volunteers and partners to distribute resources at your event. Maybe you host meetings that cover multiple topics. I don't know if Cami is on the call today, but during our informal community engagement Zoom last week, I think it was last week, she was saying that there's a mobile home park near a school that she works with, and the residents of the mobile home park were getting we're getting really overwhelmed by all these different community groups, coming to lead different activities or give different information. You might have like safe routes to school, and then food distribution, and then there's, a health partner, and then there might be an arts partner or somebody else who's trying to, address some sort of need. And while those intentions are good, having to attend lots of different events can be overwhelming for people, and they're only, so many hours in the day. So her community, they decided to put together one large event where a lot of different partners came, and it was located on site, so where people were living, and it was like a one-stop shop for all the information and things that the community members needed. So a little bit less overwhelming than having to attend all these different events. You can also include an academic component. A lot of schools are really concerned about learning loss during the pandemic. So if you can incorporate some sort of academic activity, and I can share some of those after the session, that can be a way to address something that the school really needs and that students really need. And you can also hold your event as part of something larger, your back to school night events, conferences, open streets events, if you have those in your community. You can see if Safe Routes to School could be a part of one of those larger events. And again, can kind of take the stress away from some of that planning that you have to do. And then also considering having off-campus events. Can you do an event at a park, library, sports facility, rec center, or another space around a school? And then lastly, you talk about building and sustaining momentum. So, having information about your next event available at your current event, appreciating your school staff, admin, parents, caregivers, people who really helped you put your events together. Inviting local press, which we'll talk about a bit later. You can invite local press, your local radio stations, TV stations. A lot of school districts have like communications teams who can come out and, create videos or do some live social media posting. That's a great way to, build awareness and spread the word about what you're doing, the great work that you all are doing, and also gives you some nice documentation and highlights to share back to the community. And then of course you're sharing on social media, gathering your quotes and testimonials, taking photos and creating a photo gallery, and also engaging alumni. So if there are any people who may have done Safe Routes to School way back when, and they want to come back and do something and volunteer at your event now, that's a great way to kind of keep that community connected. At this point, you might be thinking, oh, this sounds great. I want to do all these things. I'm way too busy. This is overwhelming. Totally get that. I feel that a lot when I'm thinking about planning events. It's hard to do all these things. And so, the way that I kind of deal with that is by thinking about, thoughtful planning and then thoughtful partnership. So the rest of today's session will really be about what that partnership and that planning process looks like, especially when you're planning an event with multiple purposes. I'm just going to pause for a minute, see if anybody has any questions. Nope, we're good. All right. So we'll keep rolling. All right. So I wanted to first start by talking about planning with purpose and how planning can be used to make this process feel a bit less overwhelming. So a lot of this is covered in the guide. I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Why planning matters. Obviously, planning provides the roadmap to help you stay on track. So if you're putting an event together, having a plan is helpful. I'm a big planner. And so I know that helps me feel a bit less overwhelmed and a bit more thoughtful in my planning process. Planning can also help you incorporate some of the knowledge that you gain through your community research. So if for example, that there's a community that speaks Mandarin, you want to make sure that in your plan you include translated materials and you have interpreters who speak Mandarin, just as an example. So that planning really helps you, kind of think through that process. And also, planning is great, but don't overcomplicate it. You don't need a huge, 20-page document, but having some sort of roadmap is helpful. And again, planning looks like lots of different things, especially seeking input from people who you don't often hear from. That's a really key part of the planning process. So if there's somebody who you don't hear from a lot or who you want to engage, see if you can find those people and bring them into your planning process or ask them what they would need or want in the event that you're planning. I already mentioned looking to host events in different spaces. So if you can do something outside of the school or in a space that's adjacent to a school, could that be an option? Especially now thinking about COVID protocols. Some people are allowed on campus, some people aren't, some parents are, some parents aren't. I think it just kind of depends on your situation. So exploring those options could be helpful. And of course, consulting partners, looking at your budget, and then again, being thoughtful, but not overcomplicating it. And again, planning for safe routes to school looks like so many different things. It could be done with the task force, a community partner. Make sure you have your school calendar and your community calendar on hand so you're not double booking anything. And then building in those special elements for appreciation days, cultural celebrations, and then also remembering to share your plan with others. And I did want to go back to something I talked about in our first community engagement webinar, which is the spectrum of public participation. So I mentioned this briefly in webinar 1, but I wanted to revisit it just a little bit to give you all a little bit more information about what this is. So this is a tool that I actually use a lot, in my work, and can be really helpful when you're thinking about how to involve the public in your planning processes. And this could be helpful, if you're planning, if you're working on starting a Safe Routes to School program or putting together a Safe Routes to School policy, or if you want to pilot something at your school for Safe Routes to School. There might be different ways that community members can get involved. So the spectrum gives you a lot of different options for what that community involvement can look like. And it ranges from the inform level, which is just basically you telling community members something, all the way to empowering, which is community members making the full decisions and then you saying, okay, we'll do what you decide. It doesn't necessarily mean that the inform level is bad and then empowering is good. These are just different ways to show how community members' impact can increase, depending on how you want these dynamics to work. So the inform level isn't bad. Sometimes we just need to tell people that something's happening. So I wanted to make that clear as well. So thinking about what this could look like for safe routes to school. For example, let's say that there's a bus shortage right now, and the pickup lines are really long during dismissal. So you want to work on developing a solution to this problem. Maybe you have a few community meetings. If you want to inform people about the problem or the situation, you say, hey, we have this situation that we're trying to figure out. We're encouraging kids to walk or bike instead of being driven to school. And we'll be piloting the remote drop-off program to cut down traffic at the car loop. So that's what that inform level can look like. Maybe you want to get some, parents a bit more involved. You want to get their input on remote drop-off and pickups and pickup solutions. So you, have a community meeting and consult parents a bit more. Maybe the next level is you want to have parents help develop what that remote drop-off site can look like. So that can be the involvement level. And then for collaboration, maybe parents decide, is remote drop-off and pickup the actual solution that we're looking for, or do we need to think about something else? So it's kind of, again, their impact is increasing as you move through the spectrum. And then lastly, there's that empowerment piece. So giving parents and caregivers the opportunity to determine their own solution. And maybe they say, we don't need a remote drop-off, we need something else. So I wanted to just pause and give this example too. I know that some events aren't necessarily a big school celebration. Some events are, meetings or community gatherings. And I think that this spectrum of public participation can be a great way to help you plan out what those types of, maybe more formal, for lack of a better word, events can look like. And just checking the chat. All right, and again, if you all have any questions or comments, please feel free to include them in the chat. And there's also a great Colorado youth engagement continuum. So somebody earlier mentioned working with young people. This same type of process can be applied to engaging young people in planning and decision-making processes. So make sure you check out Colorado's youth continuum as well. All right, so back to planning for events with multiple purposes. So again, thinking more about like our larger Safe Routes to School events. One thing that's important to do is really reflect on past events. So think about what went well, what needs to be changed. Again, using your information from your community research. So what do I already know about this community, and how can I incorporate that into my event plan? Setting your goals and defining your purposes. So you don't need to have like 10 purposes for your event. You might just want to do, have 1 or 2 goals that you want to reach. It doesn't have to be, a huge thing. Starting your plan early. So even thinking about, bike to school day, bike month, it's in May, we're in March now, but it's never too early to start planning. Also, if we have our Safe Routes to School listserv and our informal Zoom chats, I know that a lot of people might share, resources or ideas or do some troubleshooting through those forums. So that's a great way to kind of get some feedback or brainstorm a bit. And also consider those barriers to participation. So even something like bike to school day, which is now bike and roll to school day. Some students can't bike to school or don't bike to school. So how can you make sure that your events are accessible and inclusive for everyone? And then also including what support you need and what support your community members need. So in planning events, there are a lot of things I know that I need help with when I'm planning an event. And I'm sure that community members need things too, whether it's, interpreters or translated materials, or equipment to participate in the activities. So really think about what those needs are. You also want to think about creating your promotion plan. So obviously you're planning an event and you want people to, come and enjoy. So think about who you're trying to reach. What message do you want to share? How does your audience like to receive information? This is a really big one. And again, your community research will tell you how people like to receive information. I've been to so many events where people have told me, oh, everything here just spreads by word of mouth. Like we don't read flyers, we don't read the emails, but we just share within the community. So you have to kind of find the neighbor who has the busiest mouth and who knows everybody who can help, share things within the community. And again, your research will tell you who those people are and how they like to receive information. And also it won't necessarily be the same for every community. For example, there are some younger people might like to use social media more than older adults who want a postcard or a flyer or a phone call. So keep that in mind as well. And then also think about who can help you reach your audience. So I just mentioned like the neighbor who knows everybody. They might be able to help you reach an audience who you haven't reached before. So how can you, partner with them to spread the word? Local radio, local TV stations, they might have an audience that you're not tapped into. How can you work with them to, promote your event and spread the word? These are a few resources I wanted to point out for you all. I won't go too in depth into them, but I will send them out. You'll be able to click on these links in the presentation, but these are a few resources specifically for connecting with Latino communities, and some specific tips and strategies. I found a lot of these resources, super helpful. And again, thinking about being culturally responsive and community responsive, I think this could be a great tool for you all, who might be working with Latino and Latinx populations. So definitely check those out when I send out this presentation. And then lastly, if you're ever in doubt, consult community members and your partners on their communications preferences. Like I mentioned, people will tell you. They'll tell you if they don't want an email and they want a flyer. They'll tell you if they just want a phone call. They'll tell you how they like to receive information. So find those opportunities to talk with people and learn about people, how people prefer to receive information. And then of course, day of event, a lot of you all know these things since you've done a lot of events before, having an event plan ready to share with the school so that nobody's surprised. If you need things like tables or chairs, making sure that, the school staff knows that in advance so they can come in, assist you if necessary. They don't like to be surprised last minute. So, share your plan early and often. Having things like name tags for your volunteers, your staffs, your parent and caregiver partners, having your materials and equipment together, documentation, if there's somebody who can take, photos, videos, if they're photo release form, photo release forms need to be filled out, having that taken care of, and then having those fun, unique elements. So is the mascot there? Is there food? Is there music? Is there a special guest? Really kind of creating that fun celebratory atmosphere. And like I just mentioned, your press and your local media, and then your social media as well. If there's anything else that you all kind of incorporate into your events on the day of, please feel free to add them to the chat. I'd love to hear what you all are working on the ground. And then of course, there's your post-event planning. So, the event's over, hopefully it went great. Everybody had a wonderful time. And sometimes we just kind of let the event end and don't do anything afterwards, just like, oh, that was great. But there are things you can do after your event to, again, keep that momentum going and keep safe routes to school, in front of mind. So, if you have photos or video highlights, share them back with the school on social media, in a newsletter. If there's a school bulletin board, thank your parents, caregivers, and volunteers, following up with local press, and then sharing those, press mentions back with the school, doing a post-event reflection. So what went well, what didn't go well. You can also do this with community members, and then reviewing and evaluation materials too. So if you had any, surveys or feedback from people, you can incorporate that into your post-event planning. And if there are any other things you all do post-event, again, please add them into the chat box. I'm going to stop and take a look at the chat and just see if there are any questions. Okay, we have a question about working with 6th graders from Lorraine. So if there's anybody who has experience working with that age group, please feel free to give a little shout out in the chat box. All right, so we talked a little bit about planning. Now we're going to switch over and talk about partnership. So how can you partner with purpose for your event? And again, this is also from the guide. Think about why partnership matters. It stretches resources, helps build community, build capacity, expands your knowledge. And also, for a lot of us, our community partners are our team. Some of us work by ourselves. And so without community partners, we would really just be out there on our own. So your partners, they are your team members, they are your supporters. And, a lot of the work that we do wouldn't be possible without them. And again, partnership can look like co-leading events, which we'll talk about today, and co-marketing, co-branding, doing a task force together, brainstorming, coalition building. Partnership can look like lots of different things depending on who you're working with. And then some partner ideas, your parents, caregivers, youth groups, crossing guards, local agency staff, your artists, Safe Kids coalitions. I partnered with a lot for events, Bike to School Day, Walk to School Day, bike rodeos. They've been great partners for me. Sports teams, farm groups, agricultural groups, environmental organizations. If you have any others, feel free to put them in the chat box. There are some great partners out there that would love to be involved in Safe Routes to School events. And then partnering in Safe Routes to School events specifically, like I mentioned before, your press partners can help you with those PSAs, those TV mentions. They can help distribute materials at the local library, recreation centers. You can invite, local agency staff to your walk to school day, bike to school day. You can invite, city manager, county manager, city council members, other elected officials, if they want to come out and be involved. That's a great way to involve them in this process. It also doesn't hurt if there is some sort of positive press they could get out of it. And I'll share a nice press mention at the end of this presentation that involves local agency staff. And then if you have pop-up crosswalks or safety demonstrations, inviting a local artist to come out can also be a great partnership opportunity for a Safe Routes to School event. So when thinking about partnering for multiple purposes, I really tend to ask myself a lot of questions about what I need, what the community needs, because you're partnering with purpose, you're partnering for a reason. So these are some questions you can think about when determining who the best partner would be for the event that you're working on. So first, think about, what does the community need and who can provide this? So if the community needs interpreters or social services or transportation or food, how can that be incorporated into your events that you're actually meeting a community need? And again, your community research will tell you what the community needs. Also think about, what do you need and who can provide this? So if you work with community members who speak Spanish and you don't, you might need translators or interpreters, or you might need more instructors to lead a bike rodeo, or you might just need more volunteers to help, corral the crowd, as you're running different activity stations. So, who do you need to make this event successful? Also think about who will take the lead. So a lot of events that I've worked with, it's kind of been, maybe one person takes the lead and there are two support partners. So for a Bike to School Day event, a local Safe Kids Coalition might be the person taking the lead. And then I can kind of be one of those main supportive partners. So it doesn't necessarily always all have to fall on you, which is nice. When can you lead and when can you step back and play a supporting role? Also think about who can add some fun, some excitement, and some special elements to your events. So again, I talked about, mascots, local DJs or other people of interest in the community who kind of bring that spark that'll really make your event, kind of stand out and be something that's really fun and exciting and celebratory for the community. Also think about what you can offer back to your partners. So hopefully this partnership will be something that's, mutually beneficial. So, if a partner comes and they volunteer at your event, is there something that you can offer back to them? Can you go and volunteer at their event? Can you offer, shout outs on social media? Can you offer materials or equipment for something that they're doing? So see if you can kind of have that mutually beneficial partnership. Also think about who can help spread the word before, during, and after your event. So again, I mentioned, your press people, but also, community members, school staff, students who can, help get the word out there throughout the whole process. And then last, but certainly not least, think about how community members can be involved. So do you have a planning committee, volunteers? Can community members lead activities? Can they provide food? Can they take photos? Can they make decorations? Can they provide entertainment? I think that people like to get involved and are thinking for ways to get involved, and oftentimes are willing to get involved if they're asked in a meaningful, thoughtful way and with enough advance notice. How can community members be involved? And then also, I didn't mention this here, but how can community members be compensated? Not necessarily, monetary compensation. It could be, it could be a gift card. It could also be something else, just like, again, a shout out on your social media, or a participation certificate, or a thank you breakfast. So think about ways to compensate your community members for lending their time and skill and expertise. All right, so I wanted to move in a bit to talking about organizing a Bike to School Day event. So I'd love to hear from you all in the chat box. If you've organized a Bike to School Day event or another event in the past, what's something that you think went really well, and what's something that you would hope to change for next time? And again, I know that Bike to School Day is coming up, so this might be top of mind for some of you. So thinking about some past events that you've done, what went well, and what might need to change? I know that for me, I always feel like something that I think works really well for me is having a lot of different community partners. I think it's great. I think that one thing that I definitely want to improve on is making events more accessible for everybody, especially things like Bike to School Day or Walk to School Day, where again some kids can't or don't walk or bike. So how can we incorporate people, who are using mobility devices, or who might not be able to walk or bike because they live too far away? How can I make those events a bit more inclusive? Somebody asked about the date for Bike or Walk to School Day. Bike to School Day is, I don't know the exact date. Michelle, if you're on, can you drop it in the chat? Oh, May 4th. Perfect. And then walk to school day is in October. I think it's the first week of October. I don't know the exact date for it this year. That's a good question. All right, so speaking of bike to school day, let's talk a little bit about what planning and partnership can look like as you start to think about what your bike to school day, bike and roll to school day event can look like this year. So let's start off by talking about some community research that you can do to start getting ready for bike to school day. You'll hear me talk about community research a lot because it is basically the foundation for all of this work. Knowing who you're working with and knowing where you're working will help make your events a lot more community responsive and culturally responsive. So doing research is important. For bike to school day, this can look like, again, taking a bike ride around the neighborhood, exploring local bike trails, biking along school routes to see, what a bike ride to school actually looks and feels like. If you have time, you can do a bike audit. And kind of, think about, bike infrastructure, what's already existing and what might need to be added or improved. Also doing some observations during arrival and dismissal to see who's biking, who's not biking, collecting with your local bike organizations, surveying or talking to parents about biking. Also considering a bike to school day, needs to include other travel modes to increase accessibility. So like I mentioned, bike to school day is now bike and roll to school day. So, can that include more students? Can you incorporate activities that are not just bike focused? And then also, these days really considering COVID protocols. So if parents and caregivers aren't allowed, on campus, that's something to consider. Or if school staff, they don't have a lot of capacity to help out with things like, getting tables or chairs out, how can you incorporate that into your planning process? And again, this will really vary depending on the community that you're working with and the school that you're working with. So think about this in the context of, where you're working. Next up is thinking about the purpose of your event. So I'm, again, just thinking about like a hypothetical bike to school day event. Maybe my purpose is fourfold. I want to connect with the community. I want to encourage walking and rolling. I want to learn something about my audience. I want to address a community need. So I have those 4 different purposes for the event that I'm planning. Again, this might vary for you. This is just an example of what this could look like, but you should really think about what is the purpose or what are the purposes for the event that you are planning. And these are a few that you could possibly choose from. Of course, there could be others, but these are the 4 that I selected for today. For bike to school day, my purpose is to connect with community members, obviously inviting people, inviting the community to participate. I'll probably, work with some translators or interpreters on print materials and activities. I'll invite a local press outlet to come and document the event. And then I might want to include some community-centered, like a catchphrase or imagery, something like ride with us or roll with us, or incorporate maybe a school mascot or a motto or colors into my bike to school day activity. Again, just to give it that community feel, we're all in this together. I want to incorporate some of that language into my, into the event that I'm planning for bike to school day. Next up for bike to school day, if we're encouraging walking and rolling, obviously, if you want to have some, a bike rodeo or a small skills course, maybe I want to have a bike repair station for bike to school day, or a bike safety demo. Maybe having a remote drop-off site so students can, get dropped off on the corner and then, bike the rest of the way, or walk or roll. Also, again, acknowledging there are students who might be using mobility devices or who might be walking and not biking. Can they still be a part of this, bike and roll to school day? And then, of course, the giveaways that we always do: helmets, bike lights, reflectors, other things that other treats people like to pick up during these events. And then I might want to learn a bit about, the community that I'm working with on my bike during my bike to school day event. So I'm going to do a butcher paper comment board and a dot survey. If I do this, I might ask community members to share their favorite place to bike in their neighborhood or their favorite place to walk in their neighborhood. Maybe if I do a dot survey, I ask, what would make you feel safer biking to school? or biking in your community. That'll give me some information so that I know a bit more about the community that I'm working with. And again, this can be self-guided. It's a piece of butcher paper and some markers. You write down your question, people walk up and write their answers or put their dot on the survey, and then go on about their day. If I want to address a community need, maybe I know that people need snacks or groceries. I might see if I can have some gift cards available for parents and caregivers. Maybe I invite a local food distribution organization to come and hand out goodie bags. Maybe we offer a snack or a light breakfast for parents or caregivers who are going to be attending Bike to School Day. And I mentioned this earlier, but even something like having seating or casual gathering space, a community need could be just the need to talk to somebody else or to connect with your neighbors. So having those gathering spaces for people to just kind of, chill and talk to one another and, have a snack. Those are important parts of what makes an event, accessible and fun and responsive to what a community member needs. So again, you might be thinking, this sounds great. I'm too busy. Like I said earlier, this is overwhelming. I can't do this. It's too much. And this is really where your community partners come in and help you. So they are here to help to make this a bit less overwhelming and make it something that can actually be a success. And again, like I mentioned, these are the partnership questions you should be thinking about. And so for Bike to School Day, you might want to do a needs assessment. You might want to think about, okay, for Bike to School Day, what do community members need? Maybe people don't have bikes, or they need bike repairs, or there needs to be a bike swap. Maybe people need safe spaces to ride their bikes. How can you make your event space that safe space for the day? People need fun, free activities. Maybe people also need food assistance or materials and information in Spanish. And it's really important also to prioritize those whose needs are not usually met. So you might have people who, they have all these things. They'll come and participate and don't have a lot of barriers to participation. Think about those people who, who their needs aren't normally met. How can you plan and partner to ensure that that those needs are being met and that those communities can participate in the, in the event? And then also think about, again, what do you need? If you need extra bikes or bike instructors or giveaways or somebody to translate materials, or if you need photo, video content or food, or if you need somebody to kind of bring the fun factor, how can you, reach out to a community partner to help meet one of those needs? So once you have your needs assessment, you really start thinking about how to build your team. So you know what you need. Now you need to find people who can help address those needs. So it's your school staff, community members, obviously, a local bike organization, maybe they can provide some extra bikes or extra instructors for your event. Safe Kids Coalition, maybe they bring some activity books or snacks. Your local DOT, public health staff, can they come and support? Can they, volunteer? Can they run a giveaway table, or can they run the survey or comment board? Your local press partners to come and document your event. And then your communications team, if there are people who can come and, create a little short video, and then also other partners. Maybe there is a food partner who can come, and offer, and offer food to people who are participating. So again, that community research and that needs assessment will tell you who your partners should be. And then, of course, there's the fun factor, right? So, maybe you want to have the school mascot come or have music or decorations and art activity. Press interviews are also super fun. There are some kids who love to be interviewed, and staff members too. So could that be a fun element? Having a little mini bike skills course, your bike giveaways and raffles, all those things can add to your fun factor for Bike to School Day. And then lastly, you want to think about how to keep, how to spread the word before, during, and after your event. So like I mentioned before, Bike to School Day, maybe you want to share some highlights in a newsletter, on social media, on the radio, during the event. If you want to, live stream or do live social media posts, that can be a lot of fun if there's somebody who can, who can run that for you. And then afterwards, if you do get some press mentions, how can you share that with your, with the local community, with school staff, with city council, with your local agencies. And then also, can you use that information, when you're sharing your next event invitation, or, your next save the date. So if you have a bike to school day video, you might want to link the video and say, bike to school day 2022 was awesome. Make sure you see us for walk and roll to school day in the fall. How can you kind of, keep that press and that positivity going? And just to give a quick example of what that could look like, I wanted to share a quick video from, this is actually from the Walk to School Day event. This is from the last Walk to School Day in October, from a Safe Routes to School program right here, right outside of DC and Montgomery County, Maryland. This is a video that the school district put together. So again, they invited the communications team from the school district to come and interview kids and put together this little video that kind of highlights their program. And so I wanted to show you this as an example of what a communications partner can bring to your walk or bike to school day event. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with you all. I hope you'll be able to hear it. Sorry, one second.
Amidst a sea of umbrellas, county officials and student staff and families from Summit Hall Elementary School gathered to...
Oopsies.
Amidst a sea of umbrellas, county officials and student staff and families from Summit Hall Elementary School gathered to celebrate the 24th Annual International Walk to School Day.
It is International Walk to School Day on this beautiful rainy morning. We are so excited. We've been talking about safety to and from school all week long, getting kids hyped up and excited about walking to school.
Today is awesome. You see the energy out here. School is about getting to school safely, learning while you're here, and that's what everyone's out here to do, from our transportation, police, and fire to the school community. We've got Zeke the Zebra from the Department of Transportation, whose job is to make sure to emphasize all the things. Look at the stop sign, cross at the crosswalk, wear something that's reflective if you're at night. All the things that we want our kids to learn and have a second nature, so that as they're getting to and from school, they can be safe.
Hi, happy Walk to School Day.
Say hi, thank you. Today is a great day because I got a free gift bag and there's a fire truck right there.
So we're giving all of the kids bags of material that have guidance on how to walk safely to school, reflective items so that they can be seen when it's dark or raining, an activity kit, whistles, and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's also to encourage people to try walking to school rather than getting dropped off by mom or dad or taking the bus. It's a fun way to get to school, get some exercise, and start your day off with a little activity.
Walk to school! Walk to school! Walk to school!
Right. So again, that was something that was put together through the public school system. I think it was, I don't know if they have like a communications team or a digital media team, but again, that's a really nice, way to both document the event. And you can also see in there, there are a lot of different, partners who are there. So there's like local, DOT staff, there are council members who are there. There's the fire department that was there, school staff was there. There were giveaways, there were decorations, there's music, there's there's Safe Routes to School mascots. There was a lot that was happening there. That definitely met the fun factor, but also there's some key information about why it's important to to walk to school and do it safely. So that's my plug for reaching out to your local school district and seeing if they have a communications team or press team to kind of come out and to create some of this photo and video content for you. And last but not least, I wanted to share just a few new resources for Bike to School Day. So the National Center for Safe Routes to School has some new Bike and Roll to School Day materials for you all to access. So I'll put a link to that in the follow-up email. Colorado Safe Routes to School also has Bike to School Day stickers in English and Spanish that you can order while supplies last through April 8th. And you can email Wendy McMillan at CDOT if you're interested in getting some of those stickers. And they'll also have more posters and information to come. So we have about 1 minute left. I'm just going to check the chat box really quickly and see if there's anything else. Emily said a lot of our students don't have bikes. I worry that billing it as bike to school day alienates these students, and you can walk too seems condescending. Yes. So I would think that, in a situation where a lot of students don't have bikes, that's actually a lot of the schools that I work with. We do bike and walk to school day, bike and roll to school day. Maybe you don't do bike to school day and you do something totally different that's more relevant to, your school community. If there's something that doesn't work for your school, then, don't do it and do something else. And I think that the school, will be able, and community will be able to tell you, what it is that they would like to celebrate. So if there are a lot of kids who walk, for example, who says you can't just do, a few walk to school day events or do a bike and walk to school day. So I totally hear you. And we don't want to leave anybody out or make it seem like one mode is more important over the other. Somebody just mentioned walk and roll to school day. Yes, that's a great way to incorporate lots of different ways to travel. So instead of bike to school day, your event is walk and roll to school day. That's a great suggestion. Anything else before we close out? I know we're just about time here. All right, so I will send out an email with a recording of this webinar and the presentation slides. We'll be in touch about our April webinar very soon, so please keep an eye out for that. We'll be focusing on safe routes to school and Earth Day and environmental justice. So that'll be very timely, I think, especially for April. So keep an eye out for that. And that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Like I mentioned, I will be in touch soon. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments. I'll also be sending out a survey. Please complete our survey. We love to hear your feedback, and we hope to see you at our April webinar. Thanks, everyone.